right. So, welcome, guys. Welcome to Yoga for Normal People. This is our regular Wednesday morning class. And as a treat, I'm live streaming this actually on Instagram just to see what people think. So, today's practice, I'm going to have a couple of blocks. You can also use, alternatively, a couple of large books and a blanket. And just go ahead and find an easy seat. And we'll talk a little bit about what we're working on today. So class today is actually going to focus on what I call feeling into the dark side. So a lot of times in our modern society, we're very like, go, 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 right? And we're very focused on moving forward and constantly moving. Well, I've recently been dealing with some significant burnout, which is not a lot of fun, which has made me feel super tired, cranky. Everything sets me off. I have a lack of focus and a lack of like motivation. And that's really been a really tough place for me to be. And as you know, modern humans, that can be a really difficult place to be. So today's practice is going to be a little bit slower and a little bit lower down on the ground. And we're going to work a little bit on working into the pelvis and the hips and opening the chest, just making space to kind of work into the back body, work into that dark side, that side of us that we're like not super proud of, that we feel a little uncomfortable being in, whether it's feeling fatigued, feeling stressed out, feeling exhausted, feeling burnt out, or whether it's just feeling a little bit like we need some sort of rest. So go ahead and take an easy seat, and I'm going to take my right foot in front of my left with the top of my foot facing down. I'm sitting propped up on a blanket just because that helps lift my hips and it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable in this position. The higher you get, the lower your knees drop below your hips, and it can feel really good. So what I'd like you to do first is just reach down behind you and tug that flesh out from underneath your pelvis so that you have a better connection down to the ground. This can often just help us feel a little bit more centered. And just gently close your eyes. And as you start to close your eyes, all I'd like you to do is just check in. Notice what your breath is like. Mine right now is way up in the top of my chest. I'm breathing very shallowly. I'm not really breathing into my belly. I feel like my shoulders are a little bit like earrings up around my ears, which is, not a vibe we're going for. But as I notice those things, I'm going to try and just send my attention to them. And as I notice them, I want them to kind of fall away. So just dropping the shoulders from the ears and allowing my breath to move more deeply into my belly. We're just going to take a couple of deep breaths here. Just noticing into those places that we tend to neglect or that we tend to ignore. So a lot of times our bodies are telling us things that we need to pay attention to, and we're more likely to ignore those things because we have stuff to do. We have busy lives to attend to. But for the next few minutes, we're just going to attend to what's going on in our bodies. And then just go ahead and gently open your eyes, and you can keep your gaze focused down on the floor. And what I'd like you to do is, one of my favorite ways to start a class is just with some gentle rocking. So I'm rocking my pelvis back towards the back of the mat and up towards the left, and then back towards the back of the mat and up towards the right. Just kind of like doing almost a cat-cow. And I have my hands on my knees, just kind of allowing the top of the pelvis to roll back and to the side, and roll back and to the opposite side. And then as we kind of move, you can start to make these movements bigger if it feels good in your body. Like this kind of movement can be very soothing. We're getting into sort of that sensation of like everything's okay in our bodies, right? When we were little kids, our moms used to rock us to sleep, rock us to soothe us. And it's a very comforting sort of primal movement that feels really good. And as you make these rocks a little bigger, you can go ahead and start to lower your chest towards the floor and do full circles if you like. And for right now, I'm going off to the right. So on your screens, it may look like I'm going to the left. I'm actually not mirror teaching this morning. I'm trying something new. Sometimes I mirror teach. When I'm in a studio or in a real space with students, I will mirror teach. But a lot of times you can flip your camera around on Zoom and stuff, and it looks like we're going in the same direction. And once you've done a few of these circles, go ahead and shift to go around to the left. So just big circles with the heart. And like I really feel this in like my hip flexors, my side body, the sides of my ribs, like a real simple movement. Just feels real deep. And you can, alternate. You can decide to just go forward and do like a half moon towards the front. And then go ahead and come back to center. And you're going to take your left hand, reach across, grab for your right thigh or your right knee. Take your right arm, reach it up over next to your ear, over towards the left side. Take a couple of breaths. And here, see if you can actually press the back of your head into the wall behind you and maybe lift that heart just a little bit more towards the sky. Take a couple of breaths. And then on your exhale, go ahead and sweep that right arm forward in front of you and reach down behind your right hip. Take that left arm, swing it up over next to your ear, reach out towards the left side. Maybe bend that right elbow just a little bit. And again, pressing the back of the head into the back wall so that the center of your chest, the center of your heart lifts. Take a couple of breaths. And then go ahead and exhale and come back to center. And since I have my right foot in front, I'm going to switch the cross. Once again, just taking the top of my left foot to the mat and letting my knees come wide. And if you need to, make sure you make that adjustment where you reach underneath your pelvis and just pull some of that flesh out so that you're really connected down towards the mat. And we're going to start with those circles. So starting in the back body, starting in the shadow body, if you will, the part of our bodies that we don't really think about, that we don't really pay attention to. We often think we're like one-dimensional and, well, two-dimensional really, and flat, just on one side. The only place that matters is the front, right? Where we're going, where we're moving towards, not where we've been, not what the last, 15 months has done to our bodies and our minds. But this class is going to focus on just giving us a little space. And then go ahead and sweep that chest forward and down, coming into bigger circles, just finding a little organic movement here. And you can go one way and then go the other. You can do full circles, just whatever feels good. And then go ahead and come back to center. You're going to take your right hand, reach over towards your left knee or your left thigh, and then take that left hand, reach it up next to your ear and over towards the right side. Dipping that right shoulder down, and then seeing if you can press the back of the head into the wall behind you. Reach, reach, reach. And if you'd like, you can start to gaze down towards your knee and back up towards the ceiling. And then go ahead and come back up through center. Take that left hand down behind your left hip. Take that right arm up overhead. Reach over towards the left side with your right fingertips, bending that left elbow. And again, maybe looking down and looking up. Just trying to move some energy here. Just trying to move a little bit of blood into the shoulders so that things start to release a little bit. And again, pressing the back of the head into the wall behind you and taking a deep breath so that your chest lifts. And then exhale, come back up through center and go ahead and take the sole of your left foot to the mat while the top of that right foot stays down on top of the mat. And here what I'd like you to do is go ahead and grab a hold of both your knees and like you're pulling your rib cage through towards the front, lift your heart, lift the crown of your head. Just finding a nice long spine here. And then go ahead and take that left arm to the inside of that left leg. You can take the hand down to the mat, or you can just simply hold it up and press the tricep into the leg. And then inhale and reach that right arm up overhead. Maybe gaze down towards the corner of your mat. Maybe gaze up towards the ceiling. And then exhale and come back to center. We're going to switch sides. So take the top of that left foot, place it on top of the mat. Take the sole of your right foot and place it down on the mat. So the right knee is faced towards the sky. And here, once again, take your hands to your knees or your thighs. And on your inhale, lift the chest, draw the ribs forward. Find that nice long length. See if you can breathe down into your belly. That space we tend to ignore. That space that like always knows when stuff is going sideways and you're like, oh, hey. And then all of a sudden you're like, I kind of knew that was coming. Go ahead and take that right arm inside that right leg. And again, you can take that right hand down, or you can just choose to press the back of the tricep into the right leg. Take an inhale and reach that left arm up over your head next to your ear. Fingertips stretch. Take a couple of breaths. Gaze up or gaze down towards the corner of your mat. And then exhale and come back through center. And just for a moment, we're going to shift our seat here. So if you're sitting on the blanket or a towel, you can go ahead and shift that off to the side. There's a couple of options here. I have a couple of yoga blocks. If you don't have blocks, you can sit on a large book. You can also just kneel. We're going to come up onto our knees, and I'm placing this block on its lowest setting underneath my pelvis. I'm going to walk myself forward a little bit. And then from here, just go ahead, take a deep breath, and on your inhale, draw your shoulders towards your ears and then back and down, lifting your heart. I'm drawing my elbows back towards my rib cage. I have my hands tucked into my thighs and my chin parallel to the earth. Feel the expansion of your belly here. There's a slight back bend, so I'm actually allowing the top of my pelvis to tip forward and lift my heart. And then from here, just go ahead and come back to center. Let your pelvis sit down on the support that you're on. And I'm going to do a little tapping. This is some of my favorite work to do when it comes to resetting the nervous system. So you can take your fingertips and you're just going to tap along your hairline. And you can tap quickly or slowly. Your eyes can close or stay open. The best thing about doing this stuff online is the fact that nobody can see you. Nobody is watching you. Nobody's criticizing how you do these things, and this can just be a really nice self-soothing practice. Go ahead and tap along the tops of your eyebrows into sort of where that third eye might live, along the eyebrows. And I apologize, you probably hear all this scraping and noise outside. The house next door to us burnt down at Memorial Day, and apparently they're doing demolition today, so here we are. This is modern life, right? And then go ahead and tap underneath your eyes, out towards your jaw. And then along your jawline. So maybe separate your teeth. Maybe open up the mouth. Take a deep breath. And then go ahead and tap underneath the jaw, underneath the lip, and then over the lip. So right underneath the nose. And if you'd like, you can move up back towards the sinuses, just revisiting any of the places that you tapped momentarily before. You'll find whatever rhythm works for you. From here, go ahead and take your peace fingers, and you're going to take them right underneath your ears, alongside your neck, and just drag down. So we're pulling some of the lymph, some of the energy down into our bodies. And you have a lot of lymph nodes along your neck, underneath your arms, along your chest, and exercise helps move that lymph. So like if you get swollen hands or swollen feet, sometimes it's because the lymph needs to move. So this can kind of help. It feels really good, and it's also kind of nice because we're getting into those little tiny muscles at the front of the neck called scalenes, those muscles that hold up your head. And our heads can be really, really heavy, especially when we're sitting in front of computers and phones all day. And then once you've done that, we're going to take our fingertips together in like little rosebuds, if you will, and just start to tap at the sternum and out towards the shoulders. So from the sternum out towards the edges of the shoulders. So you're just tapping at the top of the lung meridian. If you're into to traditional Chinese medicine, this is where lung meridian comes in. And you'll hear my voice kind of get funny because we're giving a little percussive movement here that's forcing the air through my chest and my windpipe, across my vocal cords. And then once you've done that, you may notice that your breath starts to soften. Feels pretty good. From here, go ahead and bend your left elbow, take your left hand behind your head. I'm going to make a loose fist, and here just tap from the center of your chest out towards the armpit and up underneath the armpit. This is a technique I learned from one of my teachers at Practice Yoga in Austin. Her name's Jen Wooten, and she does a lot of this sort of functional movement style. And I have really enjoyed learning this technique from her just because she's been it's such a different way to move and interact. And I'm just brushing up underneath the armpit. Again, lymph nodes, this is where they live. Just kind of offering a little bit of self-care here. And then go ahead and tap down along the rib cage, up through the midline, up through the chest, across the chest muscles, pecs. And then go ahead and release, and we're going to switch sides. So right arm comes behind the head, press the back of the head into the hand, a loose fist, and we're just going to tap from the center of the chest out towards the shoulder. And if you like, you can turn your head off to the left, just depending on how you're feeling. And then start to move up underneath the armpit and brushing up. Just kind of moving things and then tapping down underneath the rib cage through the chest. And you can tap gently or more firmly, just depending upon how you're feeling. And then finally go ahead, take an exhale and release. And we're going to go ahead and take those loose fists, lean slightly forward and find that space between the low rib cage and the top of your pelvis. And you're just going to do that same tapping right at where those kidneys are. So you can lean forward just a little bit. You can drop your head. And then go ahead and release. Take your hands back to your thighs. Close your eyes. And just for a moment, start to notice if anything has changed in your body. Maybe you feel sort of a vibration or a rhythm. Maybe you feel like your breath is a little bit deeper in the body. Like you can take one of those big, nice, releasing, sighing breaths. And then from here, go ahead and come forward. If you're on a block or a book, go ahead and place it off to the left or right and come on down to sit. Take your right foot in and extend your left leg long. So we're coming into sort of a half straddle position here. And what I'd like you to do is sit up tall. So again, reach down, find that flesh underneath your hips, connect to the floor. Find a nice long spine. And then from here, take your left hand to your left thigh, and you're going to slide that left hand down maybe to your ankle, slide the right hand to the hip, and then inhale and come back up. And we're just going to do that sort of sliding motion, sliding down and sliding up. And you can move with whatever breath pace, whatever motion or movement you like. You can go as deep as you like or as shallow as you like. And we're going to make these movements a little bigger. So here I'm starting to reach towards my leg, or towards my foot rather. And I'm going to start kind of reaching my right fingertips out towards the side, and then drawing them back in towards my body, maybe starting to let them creep up overhead. So again, the same kind of rocking movement. So left arm reaching up over my ear, and then sliding back down my left leg, reaching my left arm up. So just alternating back and forth. It's a really rhythmic kind of movement. And this may not look like a traditional yoga class, which is kind of my goal. Yoga for me is about getting movement and finding the kind of movement that feels good in our bodies. You know, it's not necessarily about Instagram poses and perfect places. It's about like really getting into our bodies and just moving in what feels good. Go ahead and come back up to center. Take the sole of that right foot to the mat and take your hands back behind your hips. Your right toes should face forward. Your left toes are facing towards the sky. And then all we're going to do is just take that right knee and draw it in towards the midline and then rock it out. So you're kind of doing this windshield wiper movement with your right leg. And you'll just notice kind of how it feels. A lot of times we sit so much that we don't get this kind of internal rotation and external rotation of our hips and our pelvis. You may notice, like for me, I have a little bit of a clicking. I have a little bit of a sort of snapping feeling. It's not painful, so I'm going to keep doing it. If it is painful for you, just reduce the range of motion, reduce the movement, change the way it feels. And then go ahead and come back to center. We're going to switch sides. So left foot comes in, right leg goes out long. Again, reach down, find that grounding sensation. I, have ample rear end, so getting that flush out of the way is a good thing to do. And I'm going to take my left hand to my left hip, my right hand to my right thigh, and then just going to start that sliding movement. So reaching down towards the ankle, and only at first just going as far as feels good. Like maybe I want to hang out in one spot. Maybe I just want to keep rocking like this. Whatever your practice looks like is totally okay. It doesn't have to be perfect and beautiful and Instagram worthy. It's just your own practice. And that's actually one of the things I really like about teaching online, is that like you don't have to have your camera on. You don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to have all the equipment. You can make it up as you go along. And then as we do this, go ahead and start to make the movements a little bigger. So maybe reach that left arm up over next to your ear, and then as you come back up through center, take that left hand down, reach the right arm up over your ear. So just doing this side to side rocking. Just allowing the breath and the body to move. And like, I'm not giving any breathing cues. You can inhale when you want. You can exhale when you want. Again, this is your practice. And this is really just about finding what feels good. And then we'll take one more of those. And when you come back to center, you're going to go ahead and take the sole of that left foot, plant it down on the mat, and take your hands behind your hips. So you're kind of leaning back here. And then just windshield wipering that left leg in and out, rocking back and forth. Breathing however you want to breathe. I'm enjoying an inhale on the external rotation, so I'm going to go with that. We'll do 2 more of those. And then when you're ready, come back to center. And if you have tender knees, we are going to get on all fours, or what's known as quadruped position. If you have tender knees, grab a blanket or your like beach towel or something soft just to pad your knees. And then also just take one of your blocks. If you don't have a block, don't worry. You can also use a book and just place it off to the left or right. Go ahead and come around onto all fours. And here, the way that I'm going to place myself is so that the tops of my feet actually hang off the back of the blanket. It just gives our ankles a little bit of space so that we're not completely flat on the tops of our feet. It's not a natural position for a lot of people, so this can sometimes help. So from here, we're just going to do a couple of simple cat-cows. But what I'd like you to do is actually focus your attention on your core instead of maybe focusing it on pressing down into the ground with the hands and knees. So as if there is a string that's attached to the back of your belly button, what I'd like you to do is start to tip your pelvis down towards the mat, draw your belly button towards your spine, and let your head fall between your shoulders, rounding through the back body. And then inhaling, and I am going to give some cues on this, to let the belly hang low, let the head hang high, tailbone goes high, and then just start to move. So if that means just staying within this sort of very particular movement, focusing really on initiating it from the core, maybe going a little slower because of that. Because a lot of times we like to use our limbs, like our external limbs, to like push ourselves through things. Instead, just kind of go inside. Allow the core, the center of our bodies, to initiate the movement. And then if you like, you can bring a little organic movement here. So if you like, I'm enjoying being in cow position, where my belly is hanging low, and I'm just going to start to rock my hips left and right, kind of stretching into the outer hip flexors, The outer, uh, man, the outer hips. This is really like very intense for me, strangely. I guess I've been sitting a lot. But just kind of shifting the hips left and right, almost like you were going to sit your hips down towards your heels, but not maybe going that far. If it feels good to sit your hips down towards your heels while you kind of shift off to left and right, go ahead and do that. And then once you've done that, go ahead and take a moment. Take your toes to touch, knees wide. Let your hips sink back towards your heels. Take a nice long child's pose. Maybe let your forehead fall to the mat. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And then we're going to start to make these cat-cow movements a little bigger. So instead of really initiating it from our core, what I'd like you to do is walk your hands out slightly in front of your shoulders. And then from here, just start to allow your hips to come forward as much as you like, keeping your knees down, maybe coming into sort of a low or really a big cobra, and then exhaling and shifting back into that child's pose. So you're just rocking forward and back. And you can separate your feet. You can choose only to come, say, so far, and whatever feels good in your low back. Make sure that you're keeping your low back comfortable for wherever you are. So we don't do a lot of this back bending in our daily lives, and we are going to work into a little bit of that side bending, twisting, back bending movement. It's good for our spines. It's good for our bodies, but mostly it feels good because we spend so much time just rounded and curled, or as Nelson calls it, in our shrimp shape, sitting or lying on the floor or lying in bed or whatever. It's this like you become this curled shrimp shape. I'll take 2 more of those. This is actually feeling pretty darn good in my body. And then go ahead and walk your hands back underneath your shoulders. Palms plant down. Make sure that like your fingers, your pointer fingers are not lifting. Tuck your toes. And then from here, what I'd like you to do is just start to hover your knees. So we're building a little heat here, building a little bit of fire. And then exhale and start to press your hips back towards your thighs, press your hips back towards your heels, the belly toward the thighs, keeping those knees bent. And then come forward back into that hovering position. So we're just kind of moving back and forward. If this is too much, you can return to that previous movement, but see if you can hover those knees. And then go ahead and come forward one more time, hover the knees, and then inhale, press your hips towards the ceiling, drop your heels, maybe pedal out your feet. So dropping your right knee and your left, just kind of shifting the hips left and right. Again, you'll notice there's not a lot of static holds in this class. It's kind of how I like to move and teach. It's really about finding this organic, kind of fluid movement that feels good in our bodies. Take a couple of breaths. And then when you're ready, go ahead and bend your knees, look between your hands, and take a walk up to the top of your mat. Inhale to halfway lift. Exhale to fold. Inhale to sweep your arms up and overhead, maybe look up. And exhale, hands come down to heart center. Inhale to sweep up. Exhale to fold. Inhale to halfway lift. Exhale, fingertips come down, right foot steps back. You can drop down to that right knee. If you want to keep that blanket where it is, keep it where it is. If you want to get rid of it, get rid of it. Go ahead and find your block or your book, and we're going to come up just to a kind of a tall kneeling position. So top of my right foot is pressed down into the mat. My hands are on my hips. I'm going to inhale and reach up. And then exhale, sweep my hands wide and interlace your fingers behind your low back. You can do it whichever way you like. From here, drag the knuckles of your fingers down towards the earth, lift your heart. Take an inhale here. And then on your exhale, walk that left foot slightly wider and fold forward at the hips, lifting those fingertips towards the sky. Still keeping that interlace, letting your head drop towards the mat. Take an inhale here. And an exhale. And then inhale to sweep your heart back up. And as you come back up to that tall kneeling position, sweep your arms up and overhead. And exhale, reach down with your left hand, find your block or your book, or if you don't have one, that's totally okay. I'm going to put mine on its highest setting, but if you don't have one, you can just hover. And then on your inhale, we're going to reach over towards the left side with our right arm, just kind of doing a nice side bend here. I like the block here. It helps kind of support, but you can also do it without a block. And then inhale to come back up, reach down, pick up that book or block. You're going to lift it in front of you. And then exhale, switch hands and drop it down onto the right side. And if you have that block, you can place your right hand on that block, reach over towards the right side. Again, taking that stretch into the rib cage, into the hips. Inhale back through center. Take that block with you. And on your inhale, lift the block up overhead, lift the chest. Maybe do a little bitty back bend. See if you can press the block with your hands. If you don't have a block, perfectly okay to just take both hands up overhead. Reach your heart high. Take an inhale here. And then exhale. Sweep your hands down. Frame that front foot. Tuck your back toes. Lift your back knee. And then step back. Downward facing dog. And again, just kind of pedal out those feet. Left and right, dropping the heels, shifting the hips. Take a couple breaths. Inhale to bend your knees and exhale to take a walk on up to the top of your mat. Inhale to halfway lift. Exhale to fold. Inhale and sweep your arms up and overhead. And exhale, hands come down to heart center. Inhale to sweep up. Exhale to fold. Inhale to halfway lift. And exhale, you're going to step that, right foot back. Right foot, left foot, left foot. I'm like totally confused this morning. Inhale to sweep up. And then exhale. Go ahead and interlace those fingers behind your back. Even yoga teachers get confused as to what's right and left. And this time as you interlace those fingers, go ahead and interlace them the opposite direction. So make that grip feel weird. Drag those knuckles towards the earth. Lift your heart. Take that right foot out just a little bit wider. And then on your exhale, you're going to fold to the inside of that front leg. Let those knuckles go towards the ceiling. Let the head drop towards the earth. Take a couple of breaths. And then inhale and start to lift your heart back through center. Go ahead and come back up to that tall kneeling position. Reach over, find your block or your book. There's a big crash outside. Ignore that, it's fine. Take your block on the right side, and I'm going to put it on its highest setting. And again, make any modifications if you don't have a block. But then reach my left arm up overhead, over towards the right side. So really finding length between the top of your pelvis and the base of your rib cage. So a lot of times when we think about like working into the back body or working into back bends, we think about straight back bends. Turns out twists and side bends also work in the same way as back bends or similar way. And then on your inhale, come back up through center. Take that block out in front of you. Pass it into the left hand. Place it down on the left side. Take your right arm up overhead. Reach over towards the left. Take a couple of breaths. And then inhale back through center. And you're going to go ahead and pick up that block, take it out in front of you, press the palms of your hands into it, lift the block up and overhead, lift your heart. And again, if you don't have a block, totally okay. And then exhale, go ahead and release, place that block down. Frame that front foot, tuck those back toes, lift your back knee, step back, downward facing dog. And again, take a breath, pedal out your legs. Just kind of let the body settle. And then from here, take an inhale, bend your knees, look between your hands, and take a walk up to the top of your mat. Inhale to halfway lift. Exhale to fold. Inhale to sweep your arms up and overhead. And exhale, hands come down to heart center. Inhale to sweep up. Exhale to fold. Inhale to halfway lift, and lift like you're being lifted from the back of your heart. And then exhale, and we're just going to come down onto our knees. And what I'd like you to do is, if you have a beach towel or a blanket, go ahead and roll it, unfold it so that it kind of becomes more of a rectangle shape, and then roll it into a nice long tube. So this is what my tube looks like. And I'm going to place it right down the middle of my mat. And then from here, I'm going to come to the end with the fringe, or sort of, if you have a beach towel, whichever end is less like firm. And I'm going to sit down on that end. Plant your feet on the mat, and then you're just going to slowly walk your hands back so that you come down to let your spine rest along the length of that blanket or towel. And here, just start to let your body settle. Find a little balance. You may feel, at least initially, a little bit unbalanced, and that's okay. That's just your body figuring out how to make this work. And once you've kind of come to settle on that blanket, go ahead and take your arms out into cactus pose. So elbows are bent, chest is open, palms are face up. Your feet should be roughly in line with your hips, and you can walk them out or walk them in, just depending on how stable you're feeling. If you're feeling like you want a little bit of a challenge, go ahead and see if you can walk your feet out without tipping off your blanket. And you can also do this on like a foam roller if you have a nice long one, or one that can also support the back of your head. But I really like the blanket option because it gives a little bit of give, and it gives a little bit of support to the spine. Let your shoulder blades wrap around that blanket. And take a couple of breaths. We're just sort of orienting ourselves in this position just for a moment. We're going to do a little bit of core work. Not that we haven't been doing core work this whole time, but we're going to kind of change it up a little bit. So once you're here, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and pick up your left foot. Draw that left shin towards parallel with the ceiling. Notice what happens to your hips, whether they dip left or right. See what that feels like. Go ahead and drop that left foot, and then pick up the right. Drawing that right shin to or towards parallel with the sky, engaging the core, and see if you can do it from the core muscles rather than like the hip flexors. A lot of times our core muscles are a little bit weaker, so we try to go into our hip flexors, which causes all kinds of cramping and all kinds of tension. So really try to focus on pulling from the core, lifting from the core. And then exhale. So it seems pretty simple, right? Well, with your arms in cactus pose, what I'd like you to do is just start to slowly march left and right, lifting the left shin parallel and then lifting the right. And you can choose to point or flex your feet. I like pointing, and believe it or not, this takes a lot of core stability, because what I'm trying to do is prevent the sides of my body from dropping down into the mat. So from like dipping off to the left or right. So really you just want to engage the core so that there's stability. All right, and once we've done that, go ahead and come back to center, drop the feet. We're going to add on to this. Take your arms up towards the sky, palms face one another. Let the shoulder blades wrap around your blanket or your towel or whatever you're laying on. So let the, as my teacher would say, let the arm bones plug back into the earth. All right, so here's where we get tricky. See if you can ground down into the sole of the right foot and tighten your core so that you're imprinting the spine into, just very slightly, into the blanket. And then on your next inhale, see if you can pick up that left foot and take it to or towards parallel with the sky. Take a couple breaths. And then exhale and drop it back down. Now we're going to try the right side. So inhale, just slightly engage so that if you touched your belly, if you touched your abs, right, these actual abdominal muscles, you'd be like, oh yeah, those are firm. So hands are still facing towards one another, spine is slightly imprinted, and then you're going to lift that right shin to parallel. Make sure you're breathing, and then exhale. Okay, so if you've got that, we're going to try a little bit more of a challenge, and I will tell you that I'm not perfect at this, and I often flop off to the left or right, but we're going to try both hands up and both feet up off the floor. So you're really going to have to stabilize with the core and the pelvis to stay balanced on your blanket. So let's go with the arms first. Palms face towards one another. Fingertips reaching towards the sky. And then when you're ready, imprint the spine into your blanket. Hold that and start to lift maybe one foot and find your balance, and then maybe the other. It's tricky. See if you can find balance. And if you can't, go ahead and take your hands down next to your hips and just come to both knees towards parallel with the sky. And you can use your arms sort of as rudders, if you will. I'm hovering my hands above the earth. Let's see if I can take them. Oop, nope, I'm rolling off. So just play with that. See what your body can and can't find balance in. It's a really tricky move. And whatever happens, just go ahead and let it go. Roll off your blanket for a moment. Take your hands to your belly. If you're still on your blanket, rock on. If you're not, totally cool. Let your knees knock together towards one another. Take a couple of breaths. Just letting go of whatever sort of came up, whatever frustration or irritation may have come up in that moment. Take a couple of breaths. And then from here, go ahead and walk your feet back in towards the midline. If you're still propped up on that blanket, you're just going to roll off to the left or right, slide that blanket out from under you, and then come around to find a tall kneeling position. If you'd like to use that blanket underneath your knees again, feel free to do so. So I'm just going to take both my blocks and I'm going to place them right next to my feet as I'm sitting sort of on my heels here, as you can see. We're going to do one more little bit of work here, just actually getting into kind of more of this back bendy shape. And we did the core stuff first so that we're strong enough and we're engaged enough to go back. So go ahead and start to come up to that tall kneeling position. And if you'd like, reach back, adjust your blocks so they're within like grabbing distance. And I really like these like light foam blocks because they're light and they're easy. They're easier to move around if you're doing stuff. I have wood ones and cork ones, but these are sort of my favorite. And what we're gonna do is go ahead and place that right block back at about your ankle. And then take your right fingertips down and inhale and sweep your left arm up. So we're kind of in a side bend, we're kind of in a back bend. You can use that block to support you, or if you're feeling adventurous, you can take your hand off the block. And then exhale, sit your hips back towards your heels and switch the blocks. So left block comes back to about ankle distance. Come on up to tall kneeling. You're going to take those left fingertips down to the block. Reach that right arm up overhead. Take a couple breaths. And then exhale. Come back down. Take that right block back. So what I'd like you to do is just start to do that same kind of rocking movement where you're moving back and forth between the right block and the left block at your pace. Pressing hips forward, engaging the core so you're doing this in a safe and stable way. And just kind of exploring the movement. This feels really good in my front body, like I said before, getting rid of that like shrimp shape. And you may find that as you move left and right, that you may want to turn the blocks down. So I'm keeping mine on the highest setting. You can turn them down a notch if that feels good and feels right in your body as you move. And here, as I move, I'm trying to keep my shoulders roughly square towards the front of the mat. So I'm not so much kind of rolling and reaching. I'm keeping that chest parallel to the short end of my mat. Take a couple more of those. Have to say, they just feel good to me. And then go ahead and come back down. You can take your blocks in front of you. Take your hands on those blocks and just kind of walk them out. Let your belly come down to your thighs. Come into a nice extended child's pose with your hands on the blocks. And then slowly start to lift yourself back up. And I'm going to offer a couple of options for coming down onto your back. One of my favorite things to do when I've been sitting at a desk for a long time is to place a block on its highest setting towards the top of my mat, and then place one on its middle setting at like a T. There's about 2 inches in between the two blocks. And sometimes when I'm feeling like it, I like to take my blanket and lay it across those blocks, just so that it softens out those edges. Because sometimes, especially if you're using harder blocks, those corners can get pretty sharp into the back body. And then I'm going to turn my hips so that my low back is facing towards those blocks. Take your hands next to your hips, plant your feet, knees point towards the sky. And the goal here is to get that first block in between the bottom of your shoulder blades and the base of your neck. That taller block is going to come and act as a pillow underneath your head. So plant your feet and kind of look back and maybe scoot yourself around until you find that you've placed that block in the right spot. So really, that lower block comes right into sort of the center of my thoracic spine. That second block is just a pillow. I'm using it like a pillow on my head. And here, once again, you can turn palms face down or palms towards the ceiling. And just for a moment, what I'd like you to do is walk your feet in and start to just kind of gently windshield wiper knees left and right. And you can always do one leg and then the other. But just allowing the sort of movement of your body to kind of give you a massage in that thoracic spine, that low shoulder blade area. Feels really good to me, and I'm going to actually take my arms up overhead and take a nice long stretch. Let my rib cage flare. You may get like some nice little popping or cracking. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Today there was none, but the pressure of the blocks, like just as I rock back and forth, is so nice. It's like an easy way to give yourself a massage. And then once you've taken a few moments to just kind of rock back and forth, I'm really liking the rocking movement. I'm really liking the organic sort of flow. If you want to be still, be still. There's no reason for you to have to, do it this way. This is just what's feeling good in my body and what I found for my students works. And then go ahead and when you're ready, if you're ready, slowly start to engage your core. Press your palms down into the mat and lift yourself up and off those blocks, and you can press your arms down And come back up to a seated position just for a second and slide those blocks and that blanket off to the side. Get them on out of your way. And then we're going to come on down back to laying flat on our backs. So we'll do one more move. Since we've been at this an hour, we'll do one more move just to kind of release the hip flexors, open up the chest a little bit. So pick up your right foot and you're going to thread it underneath between the heel of your left foot and your left butt cheek, and then take your left hand and reach down and see if you can find maybe the toes of your right foot, and then let that right knee drop out towards the side. So you'll feel this stretch into the front of the right hip flexor. If this feels good, stay here. If you want to add on, go ahead and maybe lift up that left leg. Take your right hand to your left knee and give a little pull. Take a couple of breaths. If this is too much, you can also lower that left foot and just start to drop that left knee in and out. So externally rotating the femur and internally rotating it in the hip socket. So whatever shape feels kind of good. Just take a couple breaths. And then go ahead and release. Unthread that right foot, plant the right foot back on the mat. And then inhale, and you're going to pick up that left foot. Thread that left foot behind the right heel and in between the right butt cheek and the right heel, and reach down with your right hand. See if you can maybe find your toes, or if you can't, that's totally okay. You can just let the mat hang on to it. And then drop that left thigh out towards the side. And if this is enough, stay here. If you'd like more, first bus stop is you can start to rock that right knee in and out. Just internally rotating and then externally rotating. Allowing sort of that rhythm to move as you feel appropriate, as you feel good. If you want an even more sensation, you can pick up that that right leg, and take your left hand to your right knee and just hold a static position. This feels like a lot to me right now, so I'm going to actually go back to the previous step. Apparently my left hip flexors and psoas are tighter than my right, so just listen to your body and pay attention to what's feeling good for you. Take a couple more breaths. And then when you're ready, go ahead and release the grip that you have on your toes and unthread that left foot. Plant the left foot back down. You can take your feet wide, let your knees knock together. I like to keep my hands on my belly and just come into a constructive rest for a few breaths. And then when you're ready, on your next inhale, draw your knees into your chest, curl up into a nice little tight ball, flex and tighten all of the muscles in your body, and exhale and release. Come into your Shavasana, your shape. And as you rest in your Shavasana, begin to close your eyes and start to just feel into your body once again. Feel into those dark places, those places that we tend to ignore. Maybe notice where the back of your body connects with the earth. Notice where the back of your head connects, the backs of your shoulders, your waist, your hips, pelvis, backs of your thighs, the backs of your calves, and your heels. And just start to sink down into the support of the earth beneath you. Allow your breath to wash in and out. Allow your body to settle down into the mat. And there are moments in our lives when we need this kind of rest, this kind of nourishing, slow, thoughtful, almost ancient type of movement. This moment to connect to ourselves, to connect to the earth, to connect to where we are. In my own life and in my own practice, I find rest to be one of the most challenging things to try and manage correctly, to try and actually allow myself to do. We live in a world that demands constant movement, constant forward motion from us every single day. And taking an hour or 20 minutes or 15 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever you've got, to get down on your mat and move thoughtfully, mindfully, and explore the places that feels good can be absolutely transformative. So as you rest, really enjoy this time. Really enjoy this movement, this moment. Allow yourself to be held by the earth. And allow rest to enter your body where it's needed most. Take a couple more deep, soft breaths, allowing your belly to soften, allowing your shoulders to drop from your ears. And then slowly begin to invite waves of movement back into your fingers, your toes, maybe rolling your head from one side to the other. And on your next inhale, take a nice long good morning stretch. Really reach through the fingertips, through the toe tips. And then on your exhale, roll over to whichever side feels best for you in this moment. And take a moment on your side just to be grateful for the time that you've made to rest and reset. Be grateful for the fact that your body knows when it needs rest, when it needs softness. And maybe ask it for a little forgiveness when we push it too far. Slowly roll your shoulders more towards the earth and press down to sit up and find your easy seat, whatever that looks like. And as you come into that easy seat, you can keep your eyes closed or you can choose to open them. Take a deep breath in and let your belly expand. And then as you exhale, sigh it out. Bring your hands to heart center and let your thumbs rest against your sternum as you slightly lift your sternum back up into your thumbs and maybe bow your head towards your heart. Thank you so much for joining me for Yoga for Normal People today. May you find time to rest and nourish your body. All of the love and light in me bows to and honors all of the love and light in each one of you. Namaste.